We love our pets, but sometimes they act like feral raccoons on a Red Bull binge. Like my pit bull Rizzo, for example. She is 10 years old and still chews like a puppy in the velociraptor phase of doggy development. In fact, one of her favorite pastimes is running up the backyard wall, jumping into the tree, and trying to grab birds or lizards, which is hilarious to watch, but also, please don't bring me the birds. So, if you also have a dog with the energy of a caffeinated raccoon, I found something amazing. It's called the Woof Popsicle. It's basically a popsicle style toy for dogs that you fill with treats so that they stay busy instead of eating things that they definitely should not eat when those zoomies hit. My favorite part is that they have refill pops. So when your dog finishes one and then stares at you like you personally ruined their life, you can just pop another one in. So the next time your dog is behaving like Michael Scott yelling parkour and launching themselves off the furniture and you fear for their safety, give them a little treat to keep them busy. Head to the link in the show notes for the Pupsicle and the refill pops. Your pup will thank you. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. This is Suspects and Spirits, and I'm your host, Taylor Seraphin. I don't know why I said hello like that. That's not how I say hello usually, but hey, we're back. And my voice is really scratchy. Sorry about it. I hope everybody's doing well today. I'm great. Do you ever get in those moods where all you want to do is just like eat and binge watch trash TV? I love trash TV. Honestly, I will watch the Kardashians all day. When I feel like my life is a mess, I watch that show and I feel so much better. I also just really adore Chloe. Chloe for life. I am such a Chloe. I have that youngest sister energy and I'm not leaving out Kendall and Kylie. I know that they're technically the youngest sisters, but Chloe, she was the OG youngest and I get her on like a soul level. She cracks me up and I'm really like, I'm really proud of her. Okay, I'm proud of her for who she has become as a person. She's done a lot of healing and I just love that for her. Fucking Lamar. Did you guys hear what he said recently? She finally opened up about like everything that he put her through. And it's just so sad. You can't help anyone who doesn't want to help themselves. So you truly can't. You can't. Yeah, fucking Lamar, dude. And Tristan, anyways, Chloe for life. They do not deserve her. I'm talking like I know her. I have no idea. I've never met her in my life. But I was just in that mood today. I wanted to watch trash TV and eat Reese's peanut butter cups. So I did that. And now I'm here talking to you guys. I really can't stand when people are like, oh, it's my guilty pleasure. If it brings you pleasure, there's nothing to feel guilty about. Okay. The world is a dumpster fire right now. Whatever makes you happy, do it. As long as it's consensual and not morally fucked, just do it. Do whatever makes you happy. Do what floats your boat. Oh, and you guys, oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't start with this. My morbid tarot deck finally came in. It's finally here. And it is okay, listen. Oh, sorry. I'm so excited. Breathe. When I tell you, this is the most beautiful tarot deck I have ever seen in my entire existence. First of all, it's my favorite color. It's green. It's like a dark forest green, and it has these little glimmers of gold, and the designs are like tiny and cute and just like perfection. It's perfection. And well, maybe you don't, but those of you who fuck with tarot cards, some decks, when you get them, at first they're like super stiff and they're hard to shuffle or manage. Not these. Nope. They have flexibility. They are the Simone Biles of tarot cards. Also, the materials, I don't even know how to explain it. Hold on. Let me check. Does it say what they're made of? It does not. It doesn't say what they're made of, but they feel great and they aren't super polished. They have texture. Okay, they have texture to them. And anyway, this isn't an ad for their tarot deck, but it may as well be. If you could still purchase them, I'd tell you to go run and grab some, but it was a special that they did back in November. So I don't know if they'll ever do it again, but they're perfect. And I think they're my favorite. No, actually, no, not think. Like, hands down, these are my favorite. They're my favorite cards. They even have their little sayings on them, like fresh air is for dead people. The Fool card is a ghost, so clearly, like, just take my money. And then the Devil card says dark-sided, which if you know, you know. I love them, and I needed to gush over them for a minute because I love Ash and Elena, okay? Love those badass bitches. They remind me of my sisters and I. They're so funny. And I also love my tarot deck. I love anything they make, really. I already used it today to get some much needed guidance. And that's why I said, hold on, pause your day, watch the Kardashians, and then eat some candy. And you know what? Now I feel great. And trust me, you did not want me this morning. You did not want a morning recording. I was a gremlin. So glad I took a moment to just do nothing. I was not great today. The energy was just really gross energy in here, even after my coffee. Sometimes it's just like, do I need caffeine? Do I need sugar? Do I need carbs? Do I need caffeine? Even after all of that, it was a little depressing in here. So I lit my Palo Santo and my sage and I used my cards and I feel a lot better. So thanks, Ash and Elena. I really appreciate it. Couldn't have done it without your tarot cards. But you know what place just always has a weird energy and not great energy, and no amount of Palo Santo or sage will help? The place I'm going to tell you about today. So I will shut up about my own life because you came here for a story, and I've got one for you. This story today is brought to you by colleges where things go wrong, kids party hard, and sometimes they learn stuff, but also sometimes their dorm rooms are haunted. And this dorm today, this room in particular, has quite a reputation. So let's get into it. Today, we are discussing the most haunted dorm on the Ohio University campus. This room is considered so sinister, so deeply haunted, that it stands as the only documented case in the United States where a university made the decision to permanently seal off a dorm room due to paranormal activity. This dorm is very spooky. Even officials and authorities have walked away without answers. So, this, my little Ghouligans, is the story of room 428. Now, at first glance, Ohio University is your classic Midwestern campus. It has brick buildings, tree lined walkways, students, hustling between classes. Nothing about it screams haunted nightmare fuel. But don't let the postcard vibes fool you. Ohio University holds the title of the ninth oldest public university in the United States, founded in 1804 and opening its doors in 1809. And of course, with that kind of history, yeah, things tend to accumulate. And by that, I mean get haunted as fuck. But if you were just strolling through campus, you'd probably never suspect anything. It looks pretty normal, very peaceful, even. It's really, honestly, it's beautiful. But beneath that surface, this place has earned a reputation as one of the most haunted campuses in the world. And it's not just a casual label, it's backed by decades of eerie reports, strange encounters, and stories that just refuse to fade. In fact, Ohio University was even featured on Scariest Places on Earth, which is not exactly the kind of press that most colleges aim for, but that's what they got. And at the center of it all is a place called Wilson Hall. From the outside, Wilson Hall looks like any other traditional college dorm. It has red brick, aging white columns, students laughing and maybe even crying about their final exams, hiding alcohol from their RAs. It's pretty charming. But the fourth floor, that's where things take a turn. Because tucked away up there is room 428. And that room is sealed permanently. And we're not talking like no one lives there anymore or it's just locked. We mean fully inaccessible. Students haven't been inside that room for decades. The doorknob won't turn, the windows won't open. It's as if the room itself has been just completely shut down and locked away from the rest of reality. And the weirdest part is that there's no real known precedent for this. Universities don't typically just seal off dorm rooms forever because of ghost stories. But in this case, officials declared it uninhabitable. So naturally, the question is, why? So, this dorm in question was called Wilson Hall. It was built in 1964, so a later addition to the campus. And just a few years later, things began to get very unsettling. In the early 1970s, a male student was assigned to room 428. At the time, Wilson Hall had a bit of a reputation already, not for being haunted, but for being fun. It was the university's very first experiment with co ed housing, which at the time was just scandalous. Boys and girls living in the same building? Gasp. I mean, my goodness. Of course, that's just the norm now, right? That's just what we're used to. But back then, other dormitories were strictly separated by gender. This was just very common. They said, we will not have hanky panky in all the dorms, only this one. Let's experiment the hanky and maybe not the panky. So, this was basically the social hub. Everyone wanted to go hang out at Wilson Hall because they could do scandalous things like walk past the opposite sex in the hallway. And from what's been reported, the first and fourth floors housed the male students, while the second and third floors were designed for female students. It was a new system, and everything started off pretty typically. Students moving in, making friends, figuring out independence, until, like I said, that unsettling history began. Because for one particular student, his time in room 428 was cut tragically short. You see, not long after moving in, it is reported that a young male student died in that room. But the unsettling thing is that no one could determine why. There was no clear cause of death, no definitive explanation. For an otherwise healthy 18-year-old, this sudden death made absolutely no sense. Officials obviously acknowledged how tragic and unusual this was, but also they had a school to run and the dorm couldn't just sit empty. So eventually, room 428 was reassigned. And from what we know, there were no issues with those who lived in the dorm directly afterward until a few years had passed. Eventually, another student moved in. It was a young female. Apparently, the dorm levels were switched sometimes. Like some years, the boys were on the first and fourth floor, and then other years, the girls were, and so on. So now, this female student, she was, living her best college life in room 428. But this is where things take a pretty sharp and dark turn. Because what would a haunted college dorm be without ties to, yes, you guessed it, the occult? This student was reportedly very deeply involved in occult practices. What this means, I'm not entirely sure. It was the 70s. Maybe she just really liked crystals, or she had a Ouija board or a tarot deck. These days, it doesn't seem too weird. Well, for some of us, but according to reports, she had dabbled in the darker side of the occult. So, not a green witch, And she was aware of the room's history. She knew what had happened to the previous male occupant. And instead of avoiding it, she leaned in. And I mean, I don't know. Can you really blame her? I'd be talking to him all the time. I want to know the tea. I would never ask how he died because that's rude and you should never ask a spirit that question. But I would ask a lot of other questions. Like, did he play pranks on people? Who talks in their sleep? Did Chad and Mandy really break up? Was it over another girl? Can you throw this lamp? Like you cannot blame her for being curious. But I guess the problem was not her curiosity, it was the way she went about it. Instead, I guess she began using the room's energy for her own spiritual practices, specifically astral projection, also referred to as astral travel or soul wandering. I like that one. It's just, wandering soul. The idea is that the spirit separates from the physical body and it travels independently outside of yourself. I personally don't fuck with astral projection because I've seen Insidious, but it's very interesting. That being said, if you have any stories about astral projection or like out of body experiences, please write them in. I would love to hear them. I find it so fascinating. But back to this girl. So, using whatever energy lingered in that room, she was attempting to talk to spirits. And again, I can't blame her, but others said that she started to behave differently and she was becoming pretty obsessed with the occult, which that's never good. You don't want an obsession with anything, like maybe puppies, but at a healthy level, balance. Balance is needed in all things. But unfortunately, this young lady did not know how to balance her interest in these matters. And one night, something went very, very wrong. And this female student was too found dead in room 428. And the official ruling, we aren't really sure. Some say that she took her own life, while others say something paranormal occurred. But both theories have been debated. Much like the young man who passed away, this is now adding another layer of mystery, fear, and just morbid intrigue for this room. Because now, within a relatively short span of time, two young, supposedly healthy students had died in the same exact room. Statistically speaking, that's not just unlikely, it's pretty jarring. That would raise alarm bells for anybody. And many people weren't buying the idea that this was just a coincidence. A lot of people felt that there was some kind of dark energy in the room that was responsible. Adding to the unease around this room and this hall in particular were also reports that both deaths were described as being very violent and angry. Now, this is because when officials entered the room after the young female student's death, some accounts claim that they found a pentagram either drawn or scratched into the floor. And I can see how that may make someone feel a certain way. It's not something you see every day, and if you're a spiritual person, this may be alarming. And it's reported that after this final death, things escalated very quickly. Anyone who moved into room 428 after that began reporting terrifying experiences. Objects would fly across the room, slamming into walls, and disembodied whispers filled the space. And if they ignored those whispers, they would escalate into full on screams, which no, unsubscribe. I do not want unwarranted screaming at any time, anywhere. I don't like that. And what's weird is that the activity didn't follow a schedule. It was day or night. Like it didn't matter. It was constant. Doors would swing open and then slam shut violently with absolutely no explanation. And then some residents even claimed to see the face of the female student who died there, as if she was still trapped, unable to leave. So naturally, complaints and fears were being reported, and they just started piling up. At first, the university really tried to dismiss them. They were like, okay, enough of the devil's lettuce for you. But there was one detail that they couldn't just brush off, and that was the faces in the door. Yes, I said faces in the door. There were strange, demonic looking faces that began appearing in the wood grain of the door to room 428. They weren't painted and they weren't drawn on. They were like embedded in the wood, and sometimes they would change. Officials initially blamed students, assuming it was some kind of prank or, attention-seeking behavior, which that honestly would be my first go-to. Also, college kids love a prank, but students denied it completely. And honestly, I'm not even sure how that kind of a prank would work. How would you fake faces forming inside of the natural grain of the wood? I don't know. But the school would replace the door, thinking it was some sort of vandalism, but the faces would always reappear. Now, listen, I'm going to be honest with you guys. Some of the pictures I've seen look straight up like someone drew or etched in a face on the door, but others look very natural, very natural. So I do think it's a combination of some kids being little shits and then there also being something real happening here in this room and also to the door. So over and over, the cycle continued. New door, same faces, more complaints, more fear, until eventually the university reached a breaking point. They made the decision that had never been made before in American university history. They completely sealed off room 428 permanently. Now, most colleges would just make it so that students couldn't access the room, maybe use it for storage or an office or something. But they didn't repurpose this room. They didn't remodel it. They just shut it down. No one would ever enter the room again, and it would be completely boarded up and off limits. Now, assuming this would help tremendously to not only put the minds of some students at ease, but also put an end to any shenanigans that were possibly occurring, making things worse, the university was like, cool, took care of the problem. But here's the thing. Closing the room did not stop the activity. It just contained it, or at least it tried to, because the energy didn't stay put. It just shifted. Rooms 427 and 429 right next door started experiencing activity pretty much right after it was boarded up. And even beyond that, Wilson Hall as a whole had become a hotspot for unexplained phenomena. To this day, students still report hearing footsteps and movement coming from inside room 428, a room that no one can access, not even from the outside. Shadowy figures have been seen roaming the halls. Residents describe scratching noises at their doors, objects falling off of shelves on their own, drawers flying open, closet doors swinging violently, and electronics like TVs and microwaves just turn off and on without warning, which that to me is honestly one of the most annoying ghostly activities. If I had to be honest, like, don't mess with my food, okay? Don't mess with my microwave. Don't mess with my TV. Our ghost here at my house, he loves to just turn the TV on full volume at the worst moments. I ended up cutting it out of the Lost Booze Clues, like the audio part for the podcast. But if you watched the TikTok, then you know what I'm talking about. Our ghost, who I've named Lawrence, he decided that while I was recording that episode to turn on the TV. And you guys, the TV was completely turned off, and he just turned it on, and it was that really loud relaxation music. Just like, read the room, Lawrence. I was not meditating. I was not recording. I don't need your help right now. And anyone who has a Vizio TV knows that it turns to that, calm, like, I think you can probably choose it, but it turns to a nice, relaxing screensaver with some soft music when you're not using it. But the thing is, the TV was off. I don't even leave it on when I record because of this fucker's shenanigans, and he's done shit like this before. So when he turned it on, I was very annoyed. I left it in the TikTok because you can actually hear the music start. And I've told people about Lawrence before, and they're like, yeah. But you can see like how visibly annoyed I got. I had to leave it out of the audio in the podcast because my mic buffers out any background noise, and you couldn't actually hear like the music turn on. But yeah, at this point, it's not scary. It never really has been. It's more just irritating. And yes, Lawrence, if you're listening, it's irritating. This isn't new information for you. We've discussed this. He also likes to throw things off my closet shelves or knock things over that are on my desk. The other day, he closed my closet door as my husband was walking by, and David was like, "Did you see that?" I was like, "Yeah, it's just the ghost." I think my husband knows. Like, he knows, but he isn't a full-blown believer. He's still a little skeptical. I don't know. It's just Lawrence. Anyway, back to haunted dorms. So the electronics in the dorms near room 428, they would just turn off and on randomly. And this obviously spooked a lot of the residents because if that's never happened to you, yeah, it's a little jarring at first. But in my research, I came across a story that really stuck with me. This one definitely would have sent me packing. So what happened was a female resident set her alarm for 3 a.m. I guess her roommate had gone out for the night and she wanted to make sure that she got home safely. So being the badass friend and good human that she was like, hey, let me just set this alarm, make sure she gets home. Honestly, everyone needs a friend like that. Like, check on your friends. It's a good thing to do. So this girl, her alarm went off at 3 a.m. and she opened her eyes. She glanced over to her roommate's bed and she saw 2 feet sticking out from under the blanket. And relieved, she assumed that her roommate had made it home safely and she just turned over and she went back to sleep. The next morning, though, her roommate walked through their door, clearly in the same clothes as the night before, not looking rested, like she had clearly just walked in. So, very confused, the girl asked when she had left and come back. And that's when her roommate told her she had never come back that night. So whose feet were in your bed, Lauren? I don't know if her name is Lauren, but that's the name I gave her for this story. And that's a very nope. Nope. That's a big old nope on a rope for me. Apparently, there were some ghost feet. Sometimes staring at screens all day can make your eyes feel like they are actually on fire. And let's face it, in today's world, a lot of what we do requires staring at a screen, which is already horrible for your eyes. I actually went to the eye doctor recently and he was like, Wow, I didn't think it was possible, but your vision has gotten worse." Rude, but true. So, of course, he started asking me all the normal questions about headaches and screen time, like I'm a toddler whose parents don't monitor how many episodes of Bluey they consume. And I'm explaining my daily life, lesson planning, entering grades, researching cases, recording episodes, editing episodes, dog videos, more dog videos. And he's like, Yeah, you need a new prescription and you should probably invest in some blue light blocker glasses." Now, since I am a contact lens girly and always have been, I did not want to pay the extra price for blue light glasses that I would never wear. So I did what we all do. I went to Amazon. And that's where I found Any Love blue light glasses, which have really helped me on my not wanting my eyes to feel like they're on fire journey. In fact, I'm wearing them right now. So if your eyeballs are also filing a formal complaint and possibly your eye doctor too, head to my link in the show notes and grab yourself some Any Love glasses. They have tons of different styles for men and women. They're honestly super cute and they even come with a nice little case. Save your eyes some stress and go grab a pair, or two, or five, because your eyeballs deserve it. But experiences like this one are not rare in Wilson Hall. And there's actually a theory behind why all of this paranormal activity tends to happen there. Some believe that the land itself is the cause. And as Ash and Elena would say, honey, the land. Because you see, there are claims that Wilson Hall and parts of the campus were built on Native American burial grounds. I mean, are we surprised? They really need to stop doing that. Others, though, they point to the geography of the area. Some theories, and this one is really interesting, they say that the natural layout of the hills and the valleys create kind of like an energy funnel, which can occur. When I hear this, I immediately think of Sedona, the vortexes. You guys know. And if you don't, look into it. And if you don't want to look into it, I'll do an episode on it at some point. But that's one of the theories. One of the more chilling theories and honestly just wild ideas involves a pentagram. So, when mapped out, Wilson Hall is said to sit at the center of a pentagram formed by 5 surrounding cemeteries. Listen, I I didn't want to believe it either. I was like, yeah, right. Okay, like I'm a believer, but come on. Like anyone can just draw a star and put a circle around it claiming that, you know? But honestly, there are a shit ton of cemeteries around this school, so maybe that's something. I don't know. As we all know, though, the pentagram is historically associated with occult symbolism and is believed by some to amplify supernatural energy. So that's where that theory comes from. When people realized that the symbol was also reportedly found inside of room 428 after the female student had passed away there, it was definitely cause for some good old satanic panic. And just so we're clear on where I stand, Satanists, they're not devil worshiping crazy people. Okay. They're actually just really decent people. No blood rituals, no animal or child sacrifices. In fact, one of their, I guess, commandments, you may call them, is actually to protect children. So they get a bad rap. They're like the pit bulls of religion. But that's because of people who do use the occult for negative practices. And then they try to summon up some evil shit and call it Satanism. Like, don't do that. So now the pentagram formation around the campus, along with the one found in the room, some are like, oh, it's just a coincidence. Others claim it's the devil. You guys know how I feel about coincidences, but I don't think any of this has to do with the devil. I think a lot of it actually has to do with a totally different theory that I personally believe holds a lot more weight, I guess you could say, for this argument. And that is the ridges. And if you don't know what the ridges are, I'm sorry to inform you that they were a truly terrible place. And this is what I personally believe causes all of this activity at this campus. So, what was this terrible place? The Ridges, also known as the Athens Lunatic Asylum, their words, not mine. There's another name for it that I won't say, but this place, it was a former psychiatric hospital. It opened in 1868 and it operated until 1993, the year of my birth. And today, it's actually part of the university. The building is used for offices, classrooms, and is also a museum. And the history of that place, you guys, it is so dark. Like many old psychiatric hospitals, patients were not treated well and they were admitted for the most asinine reasons. The first patient to be admitted was a 14-year-old girl with epilepsy. Her parents thought she was possessed by a demon and they locked her up there. And this was very common back then. By today's standards, many of these reasons are horrific, but unfortunately, if you know a lot about the history of mental illness, not shocking. Some reasons patients were admitted here are as follows. Epilepsy, like I just said, they thought it was possession. Grief was another. Quote, imaginary female trouble. So, hysteria, that was definitely not imaginary. Tuberculosis, postpartum depression, being, quote, too emotional, being too difficult or inconvenient to manage, physical ailments like scoliosis, indigestion as well, because burping is grounds for a padded room and a Thorazine drip. And my personal favorite, novel reading, because there's nothing more dangerous than a book. Like many of these institutions, families often sent loved ones there out of shame or misunderstanding. And unfortunately, children were also sent there. Like I said, the first patient was a 14-year-old. And this facility became extremely overcrowded, which again was not very uncommon for places like this at the time. It housed everyone from Civil War veterans to the elderly to the homeless and actual criminals. Reports of mistreatment, including lobotomies, have cast a very long shadow over its history. And one of the most chilling and horrible stories happened on December 1st, 1978, when 53-year-old patient Margaret Schilling disappeared while being treated there. They looked for her for like a year, and her body was not found until January 11th, 1979. She was found inside the building. She was in there the whole time. Reportedly, she had died of heart failure, but we can't be too sure. And it's pretty sickening that she was in there the entire time and somehow no one found her. But because of this, there is a stain. There's an imprint of her body that remains on the floor to this day, despite repeated cleaning. So, this is a very, very tragic, very real story, and one of many at this awful place. Nearly 2,000 people are buried on the grounds, and many of them are in unmarked graves. So, that for me, that alone is enough to, stir up some paranormal activity. So, in my personal opinion, that's what I think causes all of this. I don't know about the rest of the lore, but this holds a lot. That's a lot. And then there are, of course, the rumors of a circular arrangement of graves used for ritual gatherings by witches in the area. And this is all on Ohio University's campus. But wait, there's more, because Wilson Hall and the Ridges are not the only rumored hauntings on this campus. There's another building on campus not far from Wilson Hall named Jefferson Hall, and it's said to be just as spooky. Jefferson Hall opened in 1958 and was used as a dining hall and a dorm for female students only, so no hanky-panky in this one. And it is rumored that one day in 1996, a group of students were exploring the attic in Jefferson Hall when they came across a door to an unused room that was usually closed. But this time, it was wide open. And when they looked inside, they saw a woman sitting at a desk in a dark corner of the room. She was dressed very conservatively in clothing that seemed to be like 1950s era, and the students said she looked like an elementary school teacher. So they reportedly greeted her. They were like, "Hi, why would you do that? These kids clearly have never seen a horror movie. That's how you die." But, anyways, they were like, "What's up?" And when they looked down, they were startled to see that this woman was floating and slightly transparent. And that's when they booked it out of there. They said, "No, brother, that's not for me." And they ran to the RA, which I don't know what an RA would be able to do about it. Like, call a priest. I don't know. But when they got to the RA, they went back to show her or him, I don't know, and they found that not only was the door now closed, but the room was locked. So the RA was like, "Hold up, I got a key." And they ran to get the key. Maybe they were concerned that there was an intruder or like, a squatter or a frogger of some kind in there. So, yes, instead of calling campus police or security, they found the key. And when they finally got into the room, it was completely empty. No sign of anyone being there. The woman was gone. Now, as wild as this sounds, come to find out, that attic room, it was never used for an office or storage or anything. There had actually been a caretaker of the hall who, way back in the day, her job was to look after the place. And many believe that that was just her ghost that they saw, still continuing to do her job in the afterlife. Which, if that's the case, just leave her alone, let her be. Let her do her thing. She can sit in her dark corner. Don't go in there. But aside from this story, there seems to be a lot of activity in that building. Lights will flicker on and off, toilets will flush on their own. People will walk into the bathroom to find toilet paper just all over the floor, just completely unraveled on its own, ghostly toilet paper everywhere. And I really hope it's a ghost doing that because if that is a college kid, get it together. Don't waste toilet paper, you know? However, one of the most common complaints of the building is not the toilet paper, it is the marble sound. Many say that you will just be, chilling, studying, eating, minding your own business, when suddenly it sounds like someone is just pouring an entire tub of marbles onto the floor above you. And even when you're on the top floor, the sounds will come from the attic, which only administration has access to, and of course, the lovely caretaker ghost lady. And that one I don't like because unless the admin are having a wild game of Mancala up there or Jacks, playing marbles or something, I don't see why there would be that sound. Where the fuck is that sound coming from? I don't like that. But don't worry, if you thought we were done, we're not, because there's more to this campus. And this one is, once again, very tragic. However, this one didn't occur in Wilson or in Jefferson. This one occurred at Crawford Hall back in 1993. On April 11th of that year, a student by the name of Laura was sitting on her window on the fourth floor of her dorm when she lost her balance and tragically fell to her death. I know, it's very sad. It also really shook the community, and now it's reported that those windows do not fully open to prevent things like this from happening again. However, because of that, the following spring of 1994, residents began reporting very strange experiences in Crawford Hall. Lights would just turn off and on by themselves. Items would disappear and then reappear several days later. And then residents began seeing somebody. A male resident once said that he had laid down to take a nap and his roommate was set to return soon, so he kind of left the door cracked a little bit and turned off the lights. Not long after he had fallen asleep, he was awoken by his door opening and the bright light from the dorm's hallway shining into the room. So, of course, he was, squinting, trying to focus to see if it was his roommate who had returned. He was still in that, dazed post nap grog when he looked up and saw that it was not his roommate, but a young woman standing in the doorway. He couldn't see her face. It was just, her shadow because of the light from the hallway behind her. But she slowly entered the room and then calmly sat next to him on his bed. And then she very softly said, "I'm sorry, I've woken you." Now, this college boy who was like, "There is a girl sitting on my bed," he assured her that it was okay. But then he was like, "Wait, who are you?" And he looked up and he saw her face but it was like the woman wasn't even listening to him. Like she was just kind of like lost in her own world. And then she just got up and slowly walked out of his room and closed the door behind her. It was a very strange and understandably very confusing situation. He was sure that he knew everybody who lived in the dorm, but he'd never seen this woman before. He was like, well, I don't know, maybe it was a roommate's girlfriend or something. So later on, he went to talk with his RA and he told the RA about what happened. He swore up and down that he had never seen this girl before. And although the encounter was strange, he felt perfectly calm when she was there. He wasn't scared. It was pretty peaceful. He was more just confused at what had happened and why some random girl walked into his room. So he described this girl to the RA, the clothing she was wearing, how she looked when he did get a glimpse of her as she sat on his bed. And the RA was stunned, like completely shocked. The RA had been there a few years. And the girl he was describing was Laura, the same student who had fallen to her death exactly 1 year before in that very building. And if you're saying to yourself, holy shit, this place has a lot of tragic history, no wonder it's so haunted. First of all, yes. But also, this isn't where it ends. There is another haunted spot on this campus, and this one is called Washington Hall. This one, though, is rumored to be haunted by an entire basketball team, possibly two. There's two different versions of this story, okay? So, years ago, it is said that the girls' basketball team was in a horrible, fatal bus accident. Very, very sad. But they never really left. It's rumored that the team haunts a part of the building, a hallway, to be more specific. And then the second version of that story is that the men's basketball team haunts the top floor, which used to be the hall's recreation room. Now, I could not find a ton to verify this, but it's all part of the campus lore. Now, last but certainly not least, we have our final stop on the Ohio University Haunted Tour. And this stop is the Convocation Center. This one is rumored to be haunted by quite a few ghosts. One of them being an RA who was killed by a boyfriend and is said to roam the halls at night, looking after her residents and protecting them even all these years later. Again, that's very tragic. I mean, I hope that that's just a rumor and that didn't happen, but these things, they do happen. And if you listen to my University of Arizona episode, you know about Graham Greenlee. We know that terrible things happen, and more often than not, it does leave behind a lot of energy. Another spirit said to haunt the center is that of a student who mysteriously died in their sleep one night. Now, this one ghost friend in particular likes to embrace students as they sleep at night, which I'm not really sure how to feel about that. I mean, I'm sure they don't mean any harm, maybe just looking for a snuggle, but consent, don't hug me in my sleep. Don't hug me when I'm awake. Just don't hug me. Unless I've known you a while and we're like on that level of comfort, I definitely don't want ghosts giving me a tender embrace while I sleep. And that includes you, Lawrence. Don't even think about it. Many dorm residents say that they have woken up to someone holding on to them. Yeah. So that for me is crossing a line. We would have to have a chat, that ghost and I. That's not okay. You can't just spoon somebody when they're sleeping. Ask first. Maybe put it on an Etch-a-Sketch or like write it on the mirror in some lipstick. Want to snuggle? No? Okay, cool. That's fine. Moving on. So, I mean, aside from Huggy McGee, the other ghosts don't really seem to cause much trouble. Not that hugging is trouble, but it's not for me. Okay. I don't mind a ghost who wants to like tidy up. You want to fold some shit or wash a dish? Be my guest. Why you guys always got to make it weird? I don't know. I think it's safe to say, though, that the overall energy here on this campus it's definitely unsettling. And I'm really not a fan of the screaming that's heard around Wilson Hall. Remember at the beginning, I said that if they ignored the whispers, they would just hear screaming? I don't like that. I find it all to be very interesting, though. And thank God that places like the Ridges are not in operation anymore. I mean, there's still some fucked up places that I would never send a loved one or anyone, but ugh, that place I'm sure is just riddled with energy. 2,000 bodies on site that's a lot of ghost activity. That alone would just haunt the shit out of that campus. I mean, that's my theory. At least that's why I think this campus is so haunted. So, there you have it, Ghouligans. When people say Ohio University is haunted, they're not just pointing at one room or one building. The entire campus carries that energy. And Wilson Hall might just be the epicenter, depending on your thoughts on the whole pentagram thing. But either way, the very high likelihood of allegedly being built on a Native American burial ground to formerly housing an inhumane psych ward, this place has some major paranormal activity. And now I want to go there. But that, my friends, is the story of room 428 and other hauntings at Ohio University. If you also want to go there, and if you enjoyed this episode and you want more, make sure to subscribe to the podcast. I alternate between true crime and paranormal stories, and the last Friday of every month is Booze Clues, which is my version of listener stories that are submitted by you, of course, the listener. So if you've got any spooky tales, hometown crimes, unhinged stories of any kind, or like I said before, astral projection stories, send them in. Send this episode to a friend that you would want to go ghost hunting with at Ohio University. And I will see you all next week for another unsettling case of humanity at its worst. That being said, thank you all for listening. Thanks for tuning in to another episode. Be good humans. And as always, remember to trust your lizard brain. Until next time, goodbye.